Matt, is Anthony with Fortis as well? Okay.
Okay, I'll call the Special Regional Council meeting to order. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. Can I get a motion, please, to adopt the agenda? Moved by Councillor Penny, seconded by Councillor Andrews. All those in favor? Carried. So, Mr. Mason, welcome. Welcome, Fortis. I'll start by introducing the people around the table here. We have Regional Development Officer, Krista Vanderstein. Director of Corporate Services, Ms. Jaylene McIver. Deputy Corporate Services, Ms. Hanson. Director of Planning and Development, Mr. Toft. And our Deputy CAO, Ms. Erin Laval. So, Mr. Mason, do you want to go ahead and do the introductions of your team?
Absolutely. It's good to see you, Your Worship, and thank you for this opportunity to take on this important subject. With me today, we have Sarah Walsh, Manager of Regulatory Affairs. You'll hear from her in a few minutes. Then we have Anthony Ho. He's the Cost of Service Manager. And Brianna Ure is also in our External Relations department, and she is going to hold me accountable for all the action items I don't do. So that's bit of a canned joke going forward, but hopefully it plays well in the new crowd. That's kind of where we're at, Your Worship, and I'll pass it back to you for now.
Thank you. And now I'll introduce our council. Councillor Gerwing, Councillor Todd Penny, Councillor Roper, and on the screen is Councillor Andrews. So, Mr. Mason, we're here to talk about Fortis's plans to merge the rates to Fort Nelson. Did you want to start by giving us an introduction to that?
Yes, we have a presentation here that we're going to go through. If council and mayor don't mind, I think there's lots of information that will be helpful to the overall application. So I'd be more than happy to start the presentation and carry on. And I guess I should start off by saying hello to everybody. I can't quite see you from the screen, but hopefully we'll all get together in person. Now the province seems to be opening up there this morning from Dr. Henry's announcement. So very encouraged.
You bet. Okay, you can go ahead with your presentation, Mr. Mason.
Okay, give me a second. I'll share the screen. Share here. Let's see if I can. All right. Everyone's good to go. Can you hear me? We're all good? Let me just get myself off the screen so I don't have to stare at myself. It's always awkward. Never mind listening to yourself again. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. My name is Matt Mason. I am one of FortisBC's Community Indigenous Relations Managers. I look after the Fort Nelson area. Before we move on to the agenda here in our next little while for our presentation, FortisBC acknowledges and respects Indigenous people in the place we call Canada, on whose traditional territories we all live, work, and play. FortisBC is committed to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, using our statement of Indigenous principles to guide our words and actions. Thanks for providing us for the opportunity, Your Worship, to speak to this Fort Nelson Common Rates application today, and we're going to take a few minutes to go through this information here in a little bit. I guess I should actually just say next slide to myself. Okay, so we're going to go over some we did the introductions, who we are, why we are filing the Common Rates application. We'll do a bit of an overview on Common Rates, and of course, we'll have lots of time, hopefully, for questions towards the end. FortisBC is an electricity, natural gas, and renewable energy utility in the province of BC, a subsidiary of Newfoundland-based Fortis Inc., Canada's largest private utility company. Some of you may not be aware of this, but FortisBC is the largest deliverer of energy, with our utility responsible for delivering 21% of the province's energy needs. FortisBC delivers natural and renewable gas, but we also deliver electricity to many communities in the Okanagan and Kootenays. We own and operate 4 hydroelectric dams and own and operate approximately 7,260 kilometers of electric power lines, in addition to approximately 49,000 kilometers of gas lines. This commitment from our parent company, Fortis Inc., and it applies perfectly to how we operate at FortisBC. Integrating sustainability in everything we do allows us to enhance all areas of our business and ensures we are providing to customers today and tomorrow. Our commitment to sustainability is important because it ensures we're going to be here for the long haul and that we'll be a part of the Fort Nelson community for a long time. We've always valued sustainability within our organization, and we're committed to leading the way toward a cleaner energy future for our customers and the province. To do this successfully, we must integrate sustainable business practices across our organization and continue to balance financial, environmental, and social factors. So that's enough hearing from me. I'm going to move on to Sarah Walsh, and she will talk about a few slides. Go ahead, Sarah. Whoops.
Uh-oh, Matt. You're gonna have to go back. Well, thanks everyone for having me today. I'll just kick it off while Matt's backing up on our slides, but I did want to say that I'm happy to take questions throughout my presentation. My portion of the presentation, you don't need to hold them till the end. If it comes to your mind as you're seeing a slide. The only thing is with this format, it might be difficult for me initially to see if someone wants to ask a question, but feel free to just interrupt me and we can take it from there. So as Matt mentioned, my name is Sarah Walsh and I'm the Senior Manager of Regulatory Affairs at FortisBC. In the next few slides, I'm going to walk you through why we are proposing common rates at this time and the benefits to Fort Nelson customers of moving to common rates. I'm also going to explain how the application review process works, and I'll then pass it over to my colleague Anthony to explain some of the details of our proposal. Going forward, we'll be talking specifically about the natural gas company. Matt has been referring to FortisBC so far in our presentation, and we'll reuse the terms Fortis, FortisBC, and FEI interchangeably. But just to be clear, our proposals are just related to the natural gas utility, not the electric utility. And you'll also see us throw some acronyms around as well, including FEFN, which stands for the Fort Nelson Service Territory. Okay, next slide, please, Matt. I'm not sure what everyone's familiarity is with our regulator and the regulatory process. So before getting into our common rates application, I'm going to briefly explain who will be reviewing our application and what that process looks like. In order to make changes to customer rates, FortisBC must first receive approval from the British Columbia Utilities Commission. And the Commission is an economic regulator of many energy utilities in BC and is an independent agency of the provincial government. FortisBC must apply for Commission approval when it wants to undertake activities such as changing customer rates, building capital projects, and entering into energy supply agreements, among other things. Next slide, please, Matt. Most applications filed with the Commission go through a public hearing process. This process will vary depending on the nature of the application, and the process and timetable are established by the panel of commissioners appointed to each application. So this flow chart shows the general sequence of events that occur when an application is filed. In the case of our common rates application, we expect that the hearing process will generally follow the steps outlined in this slide, though it may not include every item listed here. Based on our past experience with applications of this nature, I'll provide you with an example of how the process might unfold. The process will start once we file our application, which we are currently planning to do by the end of June. Subsequent to the application being filed, the Commission will issue a timetable and will provide public notice of the application and the timetable through the media, on our website, and by reaching out directly to people in the community. You'll then have the opportunity to participate in the public hearing through a number of different ways, which I'll explain further shortly. The Commission will gather evidence on the application through written information requests to us. There may be multiple rounds of written questions. The evidence stage will then be followed by written arguments from Fortis and interveners, and Fortis will then have the opportunity to file a reply argument. Once the argument stage is complete, the Commission will then review the evidence and the arguments and will issue a written decision. It typically takes the Commission 2 to 3 months to issue a decision. So based on our expectations of the regulatory process, we would anticipate a Commission decision likely in early 2022. There are 3 ways that you're able to participate in the Commission's public hearing processes. The first is to register as an intervener. The second is to register as an interested party. And the third is to file a letter of comment. As an intervener, you're able to actively participate in the proceeding. So this means you'd be able to submit written information requests to us, and you'd be able to submit a final argument. As an interested party, you would not be able to contribute evidence or argument to the proceeding. However, you'd be included on the Commission's distribution list and would receive notifications of all materials that are filed during the proceeding. This is a good option if you want to stay up to date with the proceeding, but don't have an interest in actively participating. The third option is to file letters of comment during the proceeding, which can be done at any time before the end of the evidence phase. This allows you to provide your feedback on the application and for this feedback to be seen publicly. However, you'd not be able to ask questions or file argument. Okay, next slide, please, Matt. So now that I've explained a bit about the BC Utilities Commission and the public hearing process, I just want to point out this quote from the Commission's decision on the Fort Nelson 2019 to 2020 rates application. In the decision, the Commission directed FEI to include in its next rate application a discussion of the potential for postage stamping Fort Nelson rates with FEI's rates. And I just want to clear up any confusion. FEI did not propose in the 2019-2020 rates application to move Fort Nelson to common rates. It was actually the Commission that asked FEI during the application review process to consider this move. The Commission has over the past few rate applications asked us to consider whether moving Fort Nelson customers to common rates, or as we call them, postage stamp rates, makes sense. One of our key considerations has been the rate impact of doing so on each group of Fort Nelson customers. For reasons that I'll explain further in the upcoming slides, the gap between Fort Nelson customers' delivery rates and FEI customers' delivery rates has been narrowing over the years. And at this point in time, Fort Nelson's commercial customers are now paying higher delivery rates than the FEI commercial customers. We presented this information in the 2019-2020 application at the request of the Commission. But due in part to the fact the residential customer rates in Fort Nelson were still lower than FEI residential customer rates, we did not propose to move to common rates, and instead we continued to explore different options for Fort Nelson customers. With this analysis now complete and an additional 3 years of rate information, as well as other regulatory developments, we believe that now is the right time to move Fort Nelson customers to common rates. In fact, Fort Nelson is now the only service area within FEI's large customer base which is not on common rates. Next slide, please, Matt. The key benefit for Fort Nelson customers of moving to common rates is that it will provide long-term delivery rate stability. Fort Nelson has a very small customer base compared to FEI. Currently, Fort Nelson has approximately 2,400 customers, compared to FEI's over 1 million customers. The impact of having such a small customer base is that increases in costs related to such things as investment in local infrastructure can have significant impacts on rates. This is also true when it comes to changes in numbers of customers and changes in the amounts of gas that customers consume. Next slide, please, Matt. Okay, so to further highlight this point, we created this graph which compares the past 10 years of delivery rate changes between Fort Nelson and FEI. The blue line represents the Fort Nelson rate changes. And as you can see, the year-over-year rate changes can be quite volatile. A particularly notable year was 2015. Fort Nelson customers experienced a delivery rate increase of over 16%. This was primarily due to the impact of the completion of a large capital project called the Muskwa River Crossing Project. In contrast, FEI's rate changes, which are shown by the orange line below, are generally much smoother, and FEI's rate increases have been on average lower. We calculated the average rate increase for FEI and for Fort Nelson over the past 10 years. And you can see that just in the top right-hand corner of this graph. So Fort Nelson's average rate increase over the past decade has been 5.59%, whereas FEI's average rate increase has been only 1.75%, resulting in delivery rate increases for Fort Nelson that have been on average close to 4% higher than the FEI rate increases. We expect that this delivery rate volatility will continue for Fort Nelson in the future, unless we move Fort Nelson customers to common rates. This is because future capital investment will continue to be needed in Fort Nelson in order to continue to provide safe and reliable energy service to Fort Nelson customers. And the cost of these investments without the benefit of common rates will need to continue to be recovered over the small number of Fort Nelson customers. So I'll now turn things over to Anthony to explain what we mean by common rates and some of the options we have been looking at.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Ho, Manager of Cost of Service at FortisBC. My part of the presentation will first discuss the different components of your natural gas bill. Then I will go over some of the options that we have looked at and that is possible for Fort Nelson in terms of common rates. Next slide, please. So before we start discussing the different options of common rates, I think it might be helpful to go over the different components that you see on your natural gas bill. As you can now see on the screen, your natural gas bill includes 3 components: delivery, cost of gas, and storage and transport. Just a note that this is the same for residential and commercial customers. First is delivery. The delivery portion is for FortisBC to recover the cost of our natural gas system and our daily operation, such as labor and our facility cost. In other words, this is the part where we recover the cost of our service, and our service is to deliver the natural gas to your home or your business. And also, this delivery portion of your bill is not influenced by the commodity or the cost of gas or where the gas is actually coming from. They are related to the next 2 components, cost of gas and storage and transport. Cost of gas is the commodity cost, and it is the market price of natural gas. This is mainly driven by, there you go, thank you. Yeah, cost of gas is the commodity cost, is the market price of natural gas. It is mainly driven by the supply and demand of natural gas. Lastly is the storage and transport. Storage and transport are the costs that FortisBC had to pay to store the natural gas and to transport them from the market into our distribution system. Another way to explain it is that we buy the gas from the market, but we also need to pay to bring the gas from the market into our either transmission or distribution system. Now, I want to clarify that the name implies storage and transport, but this is the same. This name for this component of the chart applies to both FEI and Fort Nelson. For Fort Nelson specifically, there is no physical storage. It is just for the cost of transporting the gas from the plant, the Fort Nelson plant, into our distribution system in Fort Nelson. Now, another important note to make that the cost for both the cost of gas and the storage and transport charge are known as flow-through. Flow-through, and basically it means that how much we pay to buy the gas or transport the gas into our system is how much we charge onto the rates and how much we charge the customers. There is no markup, and how much we pay is how much it will be reflected in the rates. All three of these rates are reviewed and approved by our regulator, BC Utility Commissions, on a regular basis. Next slide, please, Matt. Now, I hope you have a better understanding of the different component of our FortisBC natural gas, the different components on our natural gas bill. And as I've mentioned before, FortisBC has been looking at different options for common rates for Fort Nelson. I will go over a couple of them today. First is the common rates for delivery only, and the next one is if we common rates all three components. We are also exploring the different, exploring options of phasing in this common rates over a number of years. Next slide, please. So the first options that we have been looking at is if we common rates just the delivery components only. Remember that the delivery component is the portion of our bill that is for the actual operation and asset and in Fort Nelson, for example, labor and the facility in Fort Nelson. This graph shows that if Fort Nelson is to transition to FEI rates in 2022, immediately in 2022, the impact to residential, commercial, and small and large commercial customer. The green bar is the residential customer. The blue bar in the middle is for small commercial customer with annual consumption less than 2,000 GJ. And the orange bar on the right-hand side is for large commercial customer with over 2,000 GJ a year. As you can see, common rates with delivery components only will result overall savings for both commercial, the small and large commercial rate classes. The savings for the average small commercial rate classes is about $400 a year, and for large commercial customer will be around $2,000 a year. However, this will, as you can see in the green bar, will result an increase in the residential customer bill, which is about $100 a year. An important note that I want to make is that these impacts are that you see on the screen right now are due to the common rates only, assuming all things equal. And this also means that the general rate increase and any other rate riders will be additional to these impacts. We are only highlighting and focusing on the impact due to the changing Fort Nelson to common rates only. And also, another point I want to make is these numbers that you see on the screen are currently indicative only. And we do expect the numbers to be around these numbers, but these are not final numbers. Next slide, please, Matt. Now, this is the second options that I mentioned before, which if we common rates all three components. But I do want to emphasize that, and some of you might have seen other presentations or other analysis that that are using this particular options to illustrate the impact of common rates. But we are, like what Sarah mentioned before, we are targeting to file the application towards the end of June, and we are getting close to filing this application. And we are certain that we are definitely not proposing these options for common rates. I have included this in this presentation here to basically demonstrate what are different options available between the one that you saw before with common rates with delivery only and options of common rates all three components. So this is really just for demonstration purpose, and for sure we know the fact that right now this is not an options we are going with. For demonstration purpose, like assuming transition to common rates in 2022 for Fort Nelson customer with all three components immediately in 2022, the average residential customer will see an increase of about $280 a year. For commercial customer, the increase will be about $100 for a small commercial customer and about $2,000 for large commercial customers. Next slide, please. So we have shown you the impact if we transition Fort Nelson to FEI rates immediately in 2022, with the two options that we have seen, the just delivery component or with all three components. But let's focus on the delivery only options right now. Remember, and you can see on the screen on the left-hand side, the green bar, the blue bar, and the orange bar. Those are the impact for residential customer and the savings for commercial customer if it happens immediately in 2022. It's good that the commercial customer will see savings, but we also recognize that there will be impacts for residential customer, and we are looking at ways to mitigate this impact for residential customer. And one possible way is to phase in this transition over a number of years. So what you see on the screen right now is for example, how it might work with phase in. Essentially, what you see, focusing on the top graph, which is for the residential customer, is that on the left-hand side, you see the green bar about $100 impact. If we phase in, basically spread this impact over a 10-year, we're looking at about a 1% increase or about $10 a year increase. So this is one approach to mitigate the immediate impact of common rates. The bottom two graphs are for commercial customer, but so because commercial customer will see a savings due to common rates, so it is possible that we implement the phase-in, or we would only implement the phase-in for residential customers, so commercial customer might see the savings immediately without the phase-in. It is still something that we're exploring, and it's possible either way at the moment. Next slide, please. So just to wrap up our presentation, Fort Nelson is the last remaining FEI surface area that is not under a postage stamp or common rates for natural gas surface. Sarah mentioned some of the benefits of common rates. The delivery rate will have better stability over time for Fort Nelson than historically with separate rates between FEI and Fort Nelson. With the much broader customer base to absorb the local infrastructure capital investment that we know we need in the future because of safety and reliably operating our asset, and also limit any localized rate impact due to the influence of the natural gas demand in Fort Nelson. We also look at the different options of common rates. One is just for delivery only, which will result savings for commercial customers. And also we look at ways to mitigate the impact to residential customer if we implement the common delivery rates only. So that's the final slide for us. And I guess we can take on any questions that might come up.
So I have a question. Your delivery rates are a function of your costs, your capital costs. Do you have any plans to do any more capital investments in Fort Nelson? And if so, what would the cost of those capital investments be?
So yes, Mayor Foster, we are looking at doing some improvements and maintenance on our projects, or sorry, in the Fort Nelson area. I don't know, I can't really answer that question specifically on what the cost will be for those projects, because they do go through a huge analysis on trying to figure out what they do cost. So we would definitely be able to provide that at a later date.
We're developing, sorry, great question. Now we're developing forecasts for our planned capital expenditures for the Fort Nelson area, looking out to the next 3 years. And so we'll be providing that within the application, but we definitely have certain projects and programs that are still either just about to be started or are continuing on, such as our mains improvement program. And then we've also got the recreation center district station project, which is something that'll be I think is anticipated for the next year, for 2022. But we are also developing forecasts for other projects as well.
So throughout the rest of the province, throughout the rest of your network, you have got capital improvements, which of course, if we move to the same delivery rate, we would all be paying on those capital improvements throughout your network. So what are the capital improvements, what do the costs look like throughout the province? Because what I'm trying to do is get an idea here of how much we share in capital improvements throughout the province versus what the burden we have in our own municipality here.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when we look at comparisons between, Fort Nelson and, for example, the larger FEI utility, we look at it more on the total delivery rate increase and expectations around that, because there's a variety of factors that go into it. Obviously, the capital investment, like you mentioned, but in addition, expectations around revenue and load growth and other costs as well. So I think I might just get Anthony to touch a little bit on sort of expectations around increases in delivery rates as an example.
Yeah, one way to actually remember is, Sarah already mentioned too, is in Fort Nelson, we have about 2,400 customers, whereas for FEI it's about 1 million customers. So, and the cost and the cost is if Fort Nelson is part of FEI, the costs will be shared by over 1 million customers within our FEI area. Another thing that we have seen in terms of delivery rates is that within FEI, there are growth certainly happening, and growth will help to mitigate any rate impacts due to capital costs. So it's not always just the capital cost side that are driving delivery rate increase. There is definitely growth in terms of customer counts, residential customer client count, and we also have growth in other areas such as clean energy and LNG as well. That will also help to mitigate. They bring in additional revenue that will mitigate rate impacts. That if Fort Nelson is part of FEI, those low growth and those mitigating offsetting revenue, maybe that's what we call it, will also be shared to Fort Nelson as well.
So, Anthony, if we have a large commercial customer locate in Fort Nelson, that would reduce our delivery costs. Is that correct? Because just as you were explaining for the rest of the province, the growth throughout the rest of the province reduces that delivery cost. Then if we had that in Fort Nelson, this would also reduce our delivery costs. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So you can see actually with the common rates, immediately you will see a savings to your bill because of the changing over the common rates, and of course on a go forward basis, any offsetting revenue that might come from within FEI throughout the province will be included into the delivery rates of Fort Nelson as well.
Okay, Councillor Penny.
Just looking back, when you went through your slides there, you showed us both the effects that it would be if we went common rates for all components and for delivery only. You said it was unlikely that all components would be sought after. How unlikely? Yeah, and for how long is this something that we would see later down the road? I mean, right now, I do believe our delivery rates are higher, right, than they are throughout the rest of your network, but our gas charges are lower, right?
Yeah, I can probably take that question. I think so. So, you know, we've explored a number of options and more options beyond just the two that are presented in the presentation, because those two were really the bookends. But I can tell you that we have a matrix of factors that we are considering when I guess making a recommendation or a suggestion as to what the, you know, proposed option would be. And one of those key considerations is the rate impact to Fort Nelson customers. And just purely based on that, you know, the one example that Anthony showed, it just really doesn't meet the test of minimizing the negative rate impacts to Fort Nelson customers. So we have been exploring other options that would allow us to move Fort Nelson customers to common rates to certain components of the commodity. But the real sticking point, I think, is the midstream cost, the storage component of the storage and transport, and it's just vastly different between FEI and Fort Nelson. And so we would not be proposing to move the full cost of the storage component, or the midstream cost, as it's sometimes called. We wouldn't be proposing to make that a common rate between Fort Nelson and FEI.
Yeah, because that's the one bonus that we have. We're at the tap.
Yeah, exactly.
We're actually before the midstream.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
So can I take that as a long-term promise for the next 25 years? You won't be seeking an increase for that?
I think that what our plan would likely be, and this would have to be something that our gas supply team is working more closely with that. But really, what our plan would be is for as long as we're able to what's the word I'm looking for as long as we're able to procure the contracts that are allowing the benefit to the midstream component for Fort Nelson customers, we wouldn't be looking to change that component for Fort Nelson customers. I think to say a time period is very difficult because we really don't know. One of the things that our gas supply group has been dealing with is the fact that they have had to procure different contracts over the years because of the fact of the decreasing demand at the Fort Nelson gas plant. So yeah, we couldn't say for sure, but it would be definitely based on our ability to procure the contracts that are keeping the midstream rate at such a low rate for Fort Nelson.
And maybe I add that anything that might happen in the future will have to subject the same test that we're currently going. And one of the major tests will be the rate impacts to Fort Nelson customers. So if in the future that things might change in the how the gas is how the gas plant is operated up there, how the gas is flowing or purchasing or procured for Fort Nelson might change. If it involved like negative or significant rate impact that to Fort Nelson customer, it's not something we were looking for towards anyway.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, Councillor Andrews.
We've seen some charts on changing to a common rate. What did it look like when we didn't change to a common rate?
Anthony, I'm trying to decide virtually who will lead that answer off. The awkward stare. You want to go ahead, Anthony?
Yeah. So you've seen one of the charts that Sarah presented is the historical rate increase that over the years with the more volatile compared to FEI. We are expecting similar rate increases over the next couple of years for Fort Nelson if it's not common rates with FEI. So for example, that chart shows the average over the last 10 years is about 5.5%. If I don't remember the exact number in digits, but about 5.5% over the last 10 years. So we are expecting similar levels, at least for Fort Nelson in the next couple of years.
And one of the options we're still developing in the application is essentially presenting you call it a status quo option, and we are developing forecasts for Fort Nelson for what 2022 rates would look like if they were to continue on as a standalone service area. So we're too preliminary to provide that, but we will be presenting that information in the application as well.
And to make us, sorry to continue there,
Go
make
ahead,
us
Councillor
whole
Andrews.
to the blended rates, what's the percentage gap currently, like, between the Fort Nelson rates and the FEI rates?
I don't have the number in percentage right now. I could follow with the number later on, but then in terms of dollars, which is the gap that you see that you've seen on the graph right now, for if we just common rates delivery component, that gap about $100 is the difference actually in preliminary numbers, but that's the estimate of between the impact due to common rates only. So that will be assuming that Fort Nelson will be status quo for 2022 versus if Fort Nelson in 2022 going to a common delivery gas rate with FEI rates.
Thank you. Is there any other motive for Fortis besides asking, or the BC Utilities Commission asking Fortis to provide that information? Is there any other motive for Fortis wanting to go with a common rate?
Well, I think that I don't know if I'd characterize it as a motive, but I suppose, and we did present this in the virtual town hall as an additional slide, but felt maybe it wasn't really necessary for these purposes. But really the goal of Fortis has been over the years to move to common rates for all of its service areas. It creates efficiencies for the company, and it's consistent really with what general provincial policy has been, generally supportive of postage stamp rates. It's something that we also see, for example, with BC Hydro. And so really, I think it's more just an evolution over the years of gradually moving in that direction.
Councillor Gerwing.
So if I'm understanding the process correctly, there won't be further details released of what the actual plan is going to be, like including the capital investment costs, that you're going to be submitting that, and then there'll be an opportunity for the public to respond to it. So is that correct? Am I understanding the process? Like, this is your public engagement right now, and then you're going to come up with a plan that the details you cannot share with us right now, and then that application will be put in, and then we would have an opportunity to respond if we become an intervener. Is that correct? You're not going to be providing any further details before then?
Yeah, that's generally correct. And part of the reason for that is because we really, the information that we develop, and I guess, once we filed, it's essentially evidence. It's beneficial for everyone to be able to see it. It's much more transparent. And that's why we try to avoid providing specific details, partly because we are still in the process of, developing it over these next few weeks, but also because that sort of information is very beneficial to, BCUC, the commissioners, and other parties who decide to participate. And so it really is better from a transparency perspective for everyone to be able to see that evidence and test it through questions. And to answer your question, once we file the application, it would be an opportunity to register as an intervener or to file a letter of comment. But in addition to that, if you wanted the opportunity to have further engagement, we can also, we can also do that in a variety of forums as well.
Are there any other questions, councillors? Very well. I want to thank you all very much for bringing us this presentation today and for being as forthcoming as you were for the answers to the questions. We appreciate it very much, and we'll look forward to your application to the Utilities Commission.
Thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, councillors, you have before you the Fort Nelson Common Rates application. Admin report number 38. We're receiving that for information. Are there any other comments on that?
Yeah, I have a comment. So are we, is now the time where we're going to decide if we're going to have staff present so that we're becoming on the intervener status
I think
on this application, or are we discussing that at another time? Or I just don't want to lose that piece. I think we might want to make our, once we get further information, it's really hard to decide which side of the fence you're on when they're not presenting all of the relevant information, but yet we have to decide what we're going to do. So are we going to do that now, or?
Well, I think, we have to wait and see. I mean, our opportunity here is to intervene with the BC Utilities Commission, and that will come after Fortis does file. And once they've filed, we'll all have an opportunity to look at the information, and I think that would be the appropriate time for us to say, all right, this is the information that Fortis has provided and is before a BC Utilities Commission, and then we can look at any of the three options we have here of being an intervener, an interested party, or a letter of comment. But I don't think we're going to lose track of this. Mrs. Laval, do you have any comments on this as way forward?
So I have note that council doesn't quite have enough information to decide if they want to be an intervener, an interested party, or submit a letter of comment. So if what they say that they'll have their application into the BC Utilities Commission by the end of this month, we can bring it back to council. She said that it would be approximately 3 months before any kind of decision, which says that there should be a bit of a timeline in there. So we can keep this at the forefront of our watch list and see what their actual information that is submitted along with their application.
Very well. Councillor Andrews, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. I'm of the peace of mind that we just go into it thinking we're going to be an intervener, and then that way the ball is already rolled. And if we don't need to say anything, we don't. But it just speeds the whole process up, and it gives us an opportunity right off the hop.
Councillor Souls.
I see that as having some value too, and for another reason is it's one thing to be upstream of the midstream and find that as a benefit to us. I'd sure hate to find a way that we're postage stamp thinking or one size fits all, which is a common practice in the province overall. Sometimes it bites, and sometimes it works for us overall. I'm glad that my postage stamps cost the same here as they do elsewhere in the country, and that's a really good thing. But I see that one size fits all in the world of forest management hasn't helped us one little bit for a long, long time. And so if our natural gas, if we lose the advantage of being where we are as part of the blending, we got to be really careful.
Councillor Penny.
I'm also in agreement. It seems very strange when somebody comes up with something that's going to be beneficial to us, and then they felt it necessary to have 3 people present something to us that's actually going to be beneficial to us. It just seems odd, so I would much
And
rather
then didn't
our
have all the info.
foot in the ring earlier. Yeah, I'd much rather have our foot in the ring to start with than waiting.
So, Mrs. Laval, I take it that the process here is that they file, and then they have to engage with the public, and then, well, not Fortis, but the BC Utilities Commission, someone does. I believe that's what they had said.
No.
There's an opportunity here to be an intervener, an
Yes.
interested party, or a letter of comment. At what
You,
point?
you need to register for that. They're not gonna come back to us.
Right. So,
Sorry.
go ahead.
At the application stage, once the application is filed, the regulatory body then provides notice that an application has been filed, and at that point, we could file for intervenor status.
Very well. Can I get a motion then? Did we do that?
Second.
Moved by Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Penny, that we file for intervenor status when the BC Utilities Commission opens the period of time for feedback on Fortis's application. All those in favor? Carried. Very well. A resolution to move to a closed meeting, and that the meeting be closed pursuant to Section 91A and 92B of the Community Charter. Moved by Councillor Penny, seconded by Councillor Roper. All those in favor? Carried.